What up? Today we are going to be talking about picks, and I feel like as guitarists you either love picks or are really into them, like I am, or you kind of overlook them and you see it as like not that important, like it's just a thing you use to play the guitar. But I love picks. Today we've got 8 of my favourites. We're plugged into Rockaverb 50 Mark III. We're just playing it in the room because a lot of differences you're going to hear acoustically instead of through an amp. And we are playing my Pete Townsend Les Paul Deluxe. They made like 150 of these, but mine's got a bare knuckle Pig 90 in it, which sounds like this. Excuse the rubbish playing today because obviously it takes time to adjust the picks, so right hand's going to be weird. I think first of all we should start talking about the Jazz III. This one happens to be a max grip one, so it's like the carbon fibre, but they're all roughly the same. The red one is the softest and the creamiest, so it'll feel most sticky when it goes through the strings. This one is the second hardest. Tortex is the hardest, but we're gonna talk about the way the attack feels and the way the attack sounds, grippiness, and kind of like leverage, which is another important thing. The first thing to note about Jazz III's is the tip is sharp, but there's a lot of there's kind of a lot of shoulder, and that means that if you're really into aggressive angles like this, then you might not enjoy the Jazz III, because when it goes over the string you get a lot of noise and the attack isn't very pronounced. It's more rounded, but if you play more flat, then you're going to get much more pronounced attack. This pick has quite a quite a pleasant attack. There's nothing that I dislike about this pick sound-wise or feel-wise. The only thing I don't like is it's small, because if you're gripping it how you should grip a pick, then there's only a tiny amount sticking out, which means for the faster alternate pick stuff like that, when you're going across strings, you don't have a lot of leverage, which is where Jazz III XL comes in. This one, it's the same tip shape. Let's see if I can show you that. It's the same tip shape. See that? But obviously it's quite a bit bigger, it's wider at the top and it flares out more, but the part that contacts the string is exactly the same. This one happens to be Tortex, so it's slightly harder. It's a much more solid plastic. None of the Jazz III's have any give to them, but this one has a more brittle attack, you hear that? Warmer, softer, more brittle and sharp. It's much easier to dig in on the low strings of this one because when you're holding it, way more pick sticking out, and also you can dig in more like that. This is my favourite Jazz III. Next, we should probably talk about the kind of newest Dunlop pick that people love, which is the Flow pick. This is the same shape as the old jazz tones, however they do them in different thicknesses, and it has a little grippy bit on. This one's made out of Tortex again, or prime tone as they call it, but it's Tortex. This is very similar shape, however it's slightly fatter at the pointy end on the shoulders, which means that if you're into pick slanting like I am, you can have a bad time because you hear that? Do you hear that chirp? It's got chirp on the attack and that's bad. You hear that? You get the kind of bit in the front of the note. Here we go. That's a muted string, that's all pick noise. feels great to play because it goes with the strings super easy because of the shallow angle, but don't like the sound, so not a fan. It is much easier to play with though if you don't mind the sound. That brings us on to a pick that's harder to play with, which is the sharp. This one happens to be a 1.35, so it's quite thick. It doesn't bend at all. This one has no pick noise, however it's a lot harder to put through the strings because obviously the string has to go over the hump, but with an easier pick. It's got a lot more give to the way that it goes over the hump. So this one sounds much more aggressive and bright. No pick noise. Apologies for the bad playing. This one is much harder to play with just because of the amount of effort you have to put into going through the string. I like this pick a lot. The one downside to it is if you're just turning down your volume to play clean stuff, it always sounds quite aggressive, whereas with something like the flow pick, much more pleasant and clean compared to the sharp. But that's not really what we're talking about. One pick that kind of got really hyped up and died away was the Jam Track Central pick from Ibanez. This is one of my favourite picks. It's Acrylic. Oh, I can't remember what they called it, but it's Acrylic. They had a name for it. It's Acrylic. It's much thicker. It's 2mm thick, and it has a beveled point. It's very sharp, and it's very beveled, and it goes through the strings very easily. It has a very creamy feel to it. But I'm not a fan of the attack. It's too round. It's too, I don't want to say dead, but it's not got the kind of zing that you want for kind of shred lead. But excellent pick. If you're playing kind of anything technical, this is the pick you want. Similar to that is the Gravity pick. This one is a Razor, and it's basically the same. It's got a slightly less premium feel to it because the beveling is just more basic. It's not a bad thing, it's just taste. It's the same thickness, but the point on this is thicker because it doesn't bevel, it's got a more aggressive bevel to it. My issue with this one again is chirp. If we do the chirp test. Lots of chirp. The other problem I have with these, which I don't get with the Jam Track Central pick is very grippy. This one slides everywhere, just falls out your hand. I've sanded mine down so it's kind of a rough texture, and it's still slidey, like when you're picking it just spins around even with a grippy hole. Also these are very expensive. These are, I think in the UK, about £4 or £5 each, so nope. Very similar shape is Ernie Ball Prodigy. You can see it's very similar. Has the same bevel on it as well. It's got a slightly more aggressive point, which I'm not a fan of. It's kind of like the Sharp and the Gravity had a baby. It's not a bad pick, it's just harder to play with, but it does sound good. My current favourite pick, however, is the Tortex III, which I feel like is very forgotten about. This is the only pick that I've selected today that bends, and it's also by far the thinnest, but listen to the sound. It's got a very immediate attack to it. There's no lead up to the attack, it goes straight through the string. The point is very sharp, but because it has no thickness, straight through the strings. It's very nice. You always know where the tip is, even though it does flex slightly. The other part about it is you can play clean with it. Sounds great. Yeah, only downside to these is they wear down quite quickly. All these picks wear down quite quickly, especially Gravity. Very disappointed about the life of a Gravity, because they said, oh, this pick won't wear down, but it does. Fuck Gravity. Shit, that hit the screen. Yeah. But yeah, big fan of these. You can get them in Ultex as well. The Ultex ones are slightly curved towards the end. But yeah, I like the Tortex. These are great. Big fan. Subscribe to my Patreon if you want to give me money, because YouTube and music in general pays fuck all. Follow me on Instagram. Sick.